Total Screen proudly presents the Weekly Set Podcast with Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Episode 227, recorded October 19th, 2019. Hello everybody and welcome to the Weekly Set, the official podcast of the Total Screen. I am your host, my name is Tyson, and joining me today as always is my partner in crime here at the Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
So today we are going to begin our discussion of the final season of Mr. Robot Season 4. We're going to be talking about the first 2 episodes of that, and we're going to be continuing our discussion of the final season of The Good Place, in which we are going to be talking about Season 4, Episode 4. So we're going to start things off with Mr. Robot, talk about those 2 episodes, catch up, and then we're going to move on to The Good Place. First off, I just wanted to say, Mr. Robot has always done something clever with the naming convention of their episodes, where they had done it like they were all like file extensions. So like the first episode, instead of like 1.1 or something, or 1x1, it was like 1.0, because that's how like software starts. And then it had like file names using like underscores and stuff. It was always kind of clever the way they did that. But I think they've outdone themselves now with season 4, because the season 4 episode titles are all error messages.
Oh, really? Okay.
So for example, what would episode 404 be called?
Sister? I don't know.
Not found. Like the classic 404, website not found.
Right.
They're all based on actual error messages, so the names are actual ones. So the first episode is 401 Unauthorized, and the second episode is 402 Payment Required. Both of those are the actual error messages. Like the actual names for the error messages. I just thought that was really clever.
It is. I mean...
And they kind of fit with the themes of the episodes too, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, you're going on a trip this season, that's for sure. That is for sure. They're sitting on a trip.
So let's talk about how this starts. How 401 starts. So it starts off, you get the previously on Mr. Robot sequence. But what's clever is that there's a moment in there where they transitioned into the next episode.
Yeah, they transitioned into the episode proper from the preview.
Yeah, like it's seamless.
You don't notice it until you realize. And
like, oh shit, I'm watching the episode.
This preview is going on longer than expected, and I don't remember half of this stuff. Oh shit.
Wait, they didn't talk about this in that conversation at the end of season 3. Oh wait, no, I'm watching the episode.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really trippy.
So it was a clever trick doing that, but then on top of that, they followed that up with they kicking things off with a bang, we should say. Which is that they killed off one of the biggest characters on the show, probably maybe like the 4th or 5th biggest character on the show, Angela.
Right, yeah, they killed Angela.
Just killed her right off the bat, the very first scene of the episode, which is crazy. And I like that so far, within the first 2 episodes, Angela is very much still part of the show, even though she's been dead since the first scene. Because it's so much is about the people in Angela's lives and their reaction to it and stuff. And it's kind of played out through it. But we'll get to some of that later, because basically how Angela dies here is that it picks up where she was having that conversation with Philip Price, where she finds out that it's her father, and she's having this conversation about White Rose, and Angela like basically wants to like burn White Rose down now. Like she was all on Team White Rose, and then realized she was used, and now she's like practically despondent. She's just kind of out of sorts, and she like wants revenge now. She wants to bring White Rose down, and you see her father, that we know is now her father, trying to convince
Philip Price, yeah.
Yeah, trying to convince her not to take that line, to not antagonize, to beg for forgiveness instead, to do all this. And she's like what? You know, like, are you kidding me? I'm not gonna do that. There's a cool moment in that where when she's having that discussion with him at a certain point, and I didn't notice this the first time I saw it. I noticed it when I was going through trying to get some screen grabs for the cover art. There's a cool moment where she sees the Dark Army before we do.
Oh.
And so if you rewatch the episode, you can see the moment in which she realizes she's going to be killed.
Damn.
And we don't know that yet as an audience. We haven't seen them. They're off camera. And then we have the moment where she sits down kind of resigned on the bench. Her father starts walking away, and you see him opening up his shirt and pulling out a wire.
Yeah.
And then you see the 2 Dark Army operatives like come in through the other side, like passing him, like they cross paths. And they blow her brains out.
Right, yeah, they kill her.
But if you, like I said, if you rewatch that, you can see her reaction to it before we see it, which kind of paints, like, it adds like another little interesting touch to the scene, because it's something that you just don't know before, because we didn't know that was going to happen yet. So yeah, so that was a crazy scene, and it immediately led to Philip Price and having a conversation with White Rose on the phone, and you could tell he's at the end of his rope, but he's still not willing to move against White Rose.
Right.
And so yeah, that's the first scene of the episode. We also have White Rose deciding that they're basically going to send a picture.
No, that's the first scene of the season.
Yeah.
So that's how the season starts. So you can imagine the roller coaster ride that you're on.
And then White Rose says she's going to send, we eventually find out she's going to send a picture of Angela to Elliot so that Elliot knows that, he can't do anything,
Right.
As a motivator for him to stand down, basically.
Well, yeah, as a motivator for Elliot to stand down. Elliot, if that's a motivator for him to stand down, it has the exact opposite effect. Because
the next scene we get takes place a ways later. It's in the holiday it's towards the holiday season now.
Well, you forgot to say, White Rose, states her intention that, basically one of her assistants basically says to White Rose, oh, we should do something about Elliot. And White Rose then agrees that they're going to kill Elliot after the holiday season, after his use, after they're done with him.
Mm-hmm.
They're just gonna kill him now.
And the next scene cuts to New York. You see the skyline of New York City, and it's the holiday season.
Yes.
So we're now in the holiday season, and we know from before that, from interviews and stuff, Sam Esmail said that this is going to be a Christmas special, like the whole season.
Yeah, this is going to be set during the Christmas season. The previous scene with White Rose was set in October, and then we jumped to December. I think December. Yeah. We jumped to December, and this is December 2015.
And we jump right into a pretty kind of cool, classic Mr. Robot type scene, in which we have, it's reminiscent of the first scene of Mr. Robot. The very first scene of season 1 of Mr. Robot, where he was talking to the guy who owned there's a coffee shop or something. Right. And the guy had a child porn server.
He had a child porn server.
And he was telling him that he was going to be busted. And so that was the very first scene of Mr. Robot.
And it was cool because Elliot said he went to that place because it had the best Wi-Fi internet in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just hacked into it and he found that shit.
Yeah. So in this, the second scene of the final season, we kind of get a little bit something similar. We have this lawyer. He's, at an office party. He excuses himself. And then you find out he's doing something kind of, wrong.
Not even kind of. Something very wrong. He's basically having cam sex with minors.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of where it's reminiscent of, season 1, not only in that, but in that Elliot directly targets him and communicates him. Well, I should say Mr. Robot does.
Or you could say, you could actually fairly say both, because I think it's clear, cause it's revealed that they're working together at this point. Elliot and Mr. Robot are kind of one at this point. So this isn't it wasn't like before where Mr. Robot is off doing his stuff without Elliot's knowledge, and Elliot is trying to do his things, and they're working separately. This is they're fully cooperating now.
But Mr. Robot's kind of taking the lead in it. He's even taking over the narration.
Right, yeah, he is taking over.
Which is usually something that was Elliot,
Well, yeah, usually. But you find out the reason pretty soon, and there's a reason for that. It's not just because this is Mr. Robot's idea. We find out that Elliot's kind of checked out.
Yeah, he's struggling with everything that's been going on.
Yeah.
And he's having trouble kind of keeping it on. So now Mr. Robot's kind of taken over some of his role, taken over as the narrator, talking to the, in quotation marks, friend.
Yes, the viewers.
He's taking on that perspective that was normally Elliot's. And, we see this cool scene where, Mr. Robot contacts Jake Busey's character and this lawyer that we had mentioned, and is basically telling him, that he needs to, get him some information. He needs to copy some information onto a thumb drive. He needs to pass it along to him. And you have this whole kind of cool scene where this guy's being kind of tailed by Dark Army operatives. They're wondering why he's like walking around and what he's doing. And then you have him, he's on the phone with Mr. Robot, who's kind of guiding him towards Elliot sitting in a train car so that they can have a conversation and Elliot can get the information that he needs from him.
Right, yes.
It's a real cool kind of classic Mr. Robot scene. Like social engineering, espionage.
Yeah, it was really cool because, it was a classic Mr. Robot scene, and it was even cooler because the way it switched between Mr. Robot and Elliot, like, kind of seamlessly. Like, I think that's the first time they really did that.
Well, they did a cool thing where they were, like, Mr. Robot, they made it like Mr. Robot was, like, in the train station, like, following him, keeping tabs on him as they're progressing, and then the whole time Elliot's sitting in the train car. So it's almost like they're in two places at once, but they're not.
Right. Yeah, but they're not. Yeah, exactly. It's made clear, like Mr. Robot is like, well, Elliot and Mr. Robot was watching him through hacking the cameras on Elliot's laptop.
So Elliot is able to get some information from Jake Busey's character. He gives him some information on a person that's a contact, and he also, he gets that thumb drive.
Yes.
But there isn't a lot of information to go on there. So basically, Elliot's now going to try to kind of go after this other guy. He tries to help Jake Busey's character basically get away from the Dark Army so he can continue to use him as an asset. But Jake Busey's character, realizing that he's just fucked at that point, just blows his own brains out. And so that's where we end that part there. The next storyline, I think, is we have Dom.
Yeah, we have Dom.
He's kind of a little despondent living with her mom. She's freaked out. She's under the control of the Dark Army now, if you remember from last season.
Yes, she's under the Dark Army's thumb. She's paranoid now that the Dark Army agent is going to kill her mom.
Yeah, and she's living in her mom's house, and she's not looking great. She's clearly having some issues.
Clearly having some. She pulls a gun on a contractor her mom hired to, like, fix up the house.
Her mom's like, oh, what's the big deal? Or something, and Dom's just, like, freaked out because she knows what's going on.
Right.
She ends up having this weird, like, dinner date where it looks like her mom's trying to set her up with this woman.
Yeah, her mom's trying to set her up with this woman on this dinner date, and, it's really, like, super awkward. And then she tries to, like, Dom tries to, like, Dom, she's not into it, so she tries to, like, just let this woman down easy, and then we get the twist where this woman turns out to be an operative from the Dark Army who's, like, apparently, like, her job is to watch over her.
Yeah, and she's to up the creepy factor, she's like a taxidermist.
Yes, it's like really, she's like she's very much like reminds me of like a Kathy Bates in Misery like type person. Like I get that vibe.
I got a little bit of a Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she's now threatening Dom, and she's saying, even if you do something to me, it doesn't matter because the next person in line will do it.
Yeah, because they'll just get somebody else to do it. So the Dark Army has lots of people.
So Dom's stuck now between a rock and a hard place. There's nothing she can do. She just has to kind of go along with what the Dark Army wants. She's screwed.
And what the Dark Army wants, what she tells her to do is she needs to go back and basically she needs to go back to work and basically help the Dark Army finish cleaning up after Santiago.
Yes. More on that. There's a lot more on that later in the next episode.
In the second episode, there's more. That's where that goes. That's pretty much the end of Dom's story for the first episode.
Yeah. So there's like a really creepy part in the episode here, which is the honeypot.
Yes, so the honeypot. And it's the kind of thing where oh, how could they fall for it? Because Jake Busey gave Mr. Robot and Elliot that name, right? Like he just drops this name and Elliot is like, okay, well, what's the info? Give me the address, give me, all this information. And JPC's just like, kind of like, and he's like getting really shifty at this point, and he's just like, oh man, it's at my office. And that's when they try to take him back to his office, and that's when he kills himself in the middle of the street. So we find out, they've been digging into this name on the internet, Elliot has, and they found, like, social media accounts and stuff, so apparently, like, this person legitimately exists, as far as I know, because they've been doing research. It's not like they just assumed this person was right. They did actual research to find out who this person is, how they can hack him, how they can, get what they want from him.
Yeah, and I think it's Mr. Robot's kind of advising caution, then doing more research, and Elliot's kind of getting impatient.
Yeah, Elliot's like, well, no, we gotta get this done now because we're running out of time. Like you said, Elliot is really not himself. He's really agitated. He's really like kind of obsessed with getting White Rose now. And you can see like even Mr. Robot thinks he's being foolish,
Yeah, and so Elliot is he pushes forward, and they go to this, or he goes to this place, this apartment. They apparently get the address for this guy, and they go to his apartment, which is in a apartment building that's owned by E Corp. Mm-hmm. Because outside the building there's an E Corp logo on the side of the building. Yeah, and they do a few cool things to kind of cue you in that something's not right.
Oh, I know, like right away when they go in, because one of the first things you notice is like the picture on the nightstand in the living room. It has like the stock photo that comes with it when you just buy it brand new.
But what's cool with the way they did that is that they panned across it.
Yeah, that's
so like
true,
at first you're just seeing the picture in the photo frame, and then as you get to the far right end of the picture, as it's panning across, you see like the little corner tab that says it's like the stock image.
Right.
So like at first you're like, oh, this is a picture of the guy that lives in this. Oh wait, what? And it's like, wait, that's not right. And everything's just a little bit too clean.
Everything's a little bit too. They do the same thing with the lamp too, because they pan underneath the lampshade and you can see the price like tag hanging from it.
Yeah. There's when they shut the door, it locks.
Yeah, when they shut the door, it locks. So like, yeah, it's a total setup, and they realize that they've fallen for a honeypot.
And this basically leads to the end of our main character.
Yeah.
He gets
taken by operatives. So we find out that the name Jake Busey dropped was just something he was told by the Dark Army to drop in case he was ever cornered like that, by Elliot. He was just supposed to drop that name, and they fell for it. And so, inevitably, since they're trapped, and since, that they know where they are because they fell for the honeypot, they come and they grab Elliot, Mr. Robot, and...
Well, Elliot.
Elliot and Mr. Robot.
Well, Mr. Robot just kind of comes along for the ride.
Yeah.
He's just kind of a vision.
He's a real person, damn it. So, and they capture him, and then the absolute worst happens.
Yep, the creator of the show himself kills Mr. Robot, or kills Elliot. Yeah. And Sam Esmail, the creator of the show, took on a cameo role where he played the executioner who gives him a overdose of
heroin, yeah. They OD him on heroin, and they leave him there, and it's fun, and it's
credits
great.
Roll.
It's a great scene too, because Sam Esmail, his character, he's injecting, he leans forward to inject Elliot with the heroin, and Elliot is just like, aren't you gonna say something? And he just says, goodbye, friend, like that.
Yeah, which is, the first line of the very first episode of Mr. Robot was, hello, friend.
Yes, exactly. So it was really cool. That's like a really cool moment. Especially since it's like the creator of the show saying it to Elliot. Like,
yeah.
That's like a real meta moment.
Well, like, even more on top of that is that when he injects him, it cuts to black and the credits roll.
Yes. Well, we see him struggling.
And then it fades back out.
Well, we see him struggling first. Like, he struggles, like, there's a moment where, like, it's super tense because he's struggling. He manages to knock the phone off the receiver, and you're thinking, oh shit, maybe he's gonna get the phone, and maybe he's gonna be able to, like, save himself somehow. But then finally he stops moving, and he closes his eyes, and then it cuts to the credits.
Yeah, but then it cuts back out of the credits.
Yeah.
So it was a cool, like, little moment. It's like, oh shit, did they just kill him? And then it cuts back in, and I think it's some of the same goons that were holding him. Sam Esmail is wasn't there anymore. But some of the goons that were holding him, and then
no.
Philip Price.
Sam Esmail actually is there.
He is there?
Yeah, he is there.
When they revive him?
Yes.
I didn't see him.
He doesn't.
I thought it was...
I think they only show him in the initial shot, and he doesn't show up in any of the other shots. I think that he is there.
I thought they left, and then it was Philip Price showed up, and I just didn't know who was in on it with him.
Oh no, they come back with Philip Price. So we find out that was actually so we find out that those were actually Philip Price's men.
Mm-hmm.
Because then Philip Price even says at the beginning, because the second episode picks up right at that moment.
Well, the second episode actually picks up with like a montage scene that Philip Price is narrating.
True.
And
well,
so it seems like it's a little bit later, and Philip Price's goons aren't there with him anymore.
No,
it's only Philip Price.
It's only
Elliot,
Philip
and
Price.
Mr. Robot.
This is sometime after. You're right. No, they pick up sometime after Philip Price revives Elliot, and Philip Price basically explains to Elliot and Mr. Robot the entire history of White Rose and
Project Deus.
Project Deus, which is White Rose's little pet project of world domination and control.
That everything's a part of. The Dark Army, all of E-Corp, all that stuff is a part of Deus.
Yes.
They're just like little facets of Deus. And it's all under White Rose's control. He's like at the top of it. And he goes through the entire history of it, talking about world leaders being involved. They do like the Forrest Gump thing, where they have like White Rose standing next to like Vladimir Putin and getting like knighted by the Queen, and like like all this, and all these like all these like historically connected things. And they talk about how the internet was like the spread of the internet was because of White Rose saying it was a way to
control
to get
the masses,
to voluntarily submit themselves.
Yeah, to control the masses.
Yes, and so it goes through this whole thing. The whole thing's narrated by Philip Price, which is kind of cool because one of the interesting things about Philip Price and the actor who plays him is that he's kind of a bit over the top, like with his voice and everything. And I remember when that first happened, it was almost kind of like operatic kind of character coming in to this very like stark drama. And it was kind of like weird, but kind of cool at the same time, kind of theatrical. So him narrating over this like stock footage, that's all been like Forrest Gump, like I said, is just really cool. Like it's a cool match. This dramatic voice reading it and stuff. And then it goes directly from him reading it to him and Elliot and Mr. Robot sitting in this apartment with Elliot's whole plan, his yarn and sticky note board that all conspiracy theorists must have by law. Required.
It's required.
And it goes right to Philip Price talking to them about their plan and basically saying their plan's not going to work. Saying like they want to take White Rose's money. It doesn't matter.
They want to rob this bank that is where that's the holding White Rose's money.
And Price is basically like there's too many contingencies. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Like even if you're successful, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Right. Like White Rose has thought of everything. So what you're thinking, White Rose has thought it and built a contingency. So it's impossible. But Elliot is stubborn and he is insistent on that they're going to do this.
Elliot explains that he knows that Angela is his daughter, and he uses that as kind of the linchpin to getting Price involved with him. And Price seems kind of reluctant. You're not 100% sure if he's going to be on board or not, but basically the idea is Elliot's like, well, you need to get...
Elliot's rationalizing that, Price saved him for a reason.
Yeah.
Like there had to be a reason, and it wasn't just to tell Elliot all that backstory and then peace out.
but Price has to be bought, or not bought, but like he has to be convinced.
Right, he has to be convinced that Elliot can actually do this. Like that's the thing.
That it's not just a total waste.
Right,
that it's not going to go nowhere. And he's so far he's not there, but he has a plan that involves getting all of the members of Deus in one place.
Right,
and he says like you could do it because you're in the inner circle. You're there. You can do it. And he's like I'm barely in the inner circle. I've already been told I'm on my way out. Like it's just a matter of time. And so he's kind of reluctant. You don't really know if he's on board or not yet. Like, I mean, it's obvious narratively that he's going to end up being on board, but at that point he hasn't committed to being on board. Then you get, in this episode following that, you get this weird, this is like a very final season thing to do, which is that we get these funeral arrangements now, because we find out that somebody passed away, and Elliot and Elliot and Darlene are, having to take care of everything. They have to go to the home that their mom was in and work out the details. They have to do all the stuff. You realize that, it's their mom has passed away. And their mom's somebody that we've barely seen in the show. Mostly like in flashbacks and stuff of Elliot's childhood. Not a really good relationship that either Elliot or Darlene had with their mom.
No, and
she was abusive.
We've known this now. This was, it's not a new revelation that Elliot's mom was abusive and he had a bad relationship with her. We do see some more flashbacks about that, but yeah, it's not a new revelation for this episode.
But it's interesting because they're setting it up as this thing where like it just seems like neither of them care.
Right.
Like they're just going through the motions of what has to be done.
Elliot's also again, we have to stress Elliot is going through some real emotional shit with the death of Angela, which really hit him hard. Like, to the point where he's, like I said, Mr. Robot is the narrator now, not Elliot. Like, that's how messed up he is. So it's kind of like, this happens, and Elliot's just kind of numb. Like, he's already shell-shocked,
But he's kind of not really being there for Darlene, because Darlene's not really there for it either. She's kind of being kind of passive out, but that kind of starts to change at a certain point, mostly when they find out that there's this, safety deposit box that their mom has a key to. And they're like, why does she have a key to a safety deposit box? What's in there? And Elliot's just like, I don't give a shit. And at a certain point, Darlene like starts caring, and you're kind of wondering why, and that kind of comes into the story as the episode progresses, what's actually going on with Darlene, because we should mention in episode 1, Darlene's like kind of slipping back into kind of being a junkie. She's not accepting that Angela's dead, and where Elliot has the picture that he knows that Angela's dead because he's seen the picture that was sent by White Rose to him. He won't show it to her because he says it'll break her heart. They can't show her like Angela's corpse, basically.
Right, yeah.
And
last episode, Angela was like really, Darlene was really freaking out about Angela, like insisting that she saw her and she was still alive and stuff, to the point where that led to like Elliot trying to convince her otherwise. And then there was like this really cool scene in that episode where that was happening, where Elliot's trying to convince Darlene, and then he gives up and Mr. Robot steps in to try and convince Darlene Angela's dead. And they did like this really cool shot where like Elliot just like pieces out, and then like Mr. Robot walks out in front of him to talk to Darlene like in one shot. It was really cool. But yeah, that's where Darlene was.
You see how his it's a visual way of showing the way his personality disorder works.
Right, exactly. They do a lot of cool things with that this season so far. A lot of shots like that showing Elliot and Mr. Robot and how the disorder works. They do some really cool cinematography with that.
Yeah. So Angela, was having trouble accepting that in the last episode. Now she seems to be kind of weirdly interested in her mom's death, where she wasn't at the beginning. It's like the second that the safety deposit box thing came up, it's something triggered in her and she became interested. And she convinces Elliot to kind of go along with her.
Now, we should also mention there's a thread, because when Elliot and Mr. Robot are talking to Price, Elliot wants a contact that Price knows to be able to get into this bank. Elliot says he needs a contact. And I think Price brings up, I think the woman's name was Susan Jacobson.
Mm-hmm.
Susan Jacobson he brings up as a contact. Well, we know this is a woman that we know that Darlene and F Society had killed in season 2, I believe it was.
She was the one that owned, I think it was a season 3 actually, I'm not sure.
It might have been season 3, yeah, I don't know. It's been so long.
At the very beginning, I think it was season 3, and at the very beginning of season 3, if it was season 3, there's this woman and she has this smart home.
Yes.
And it malfunctions.
Yeah, malfunction.
And she ends up leaving, she calls to get it repaired, and the call is intercepted by F Society, and she ends up leaving, while her smart home is going to be repaired. And F Society, takes over her house.
Right.
And Darlene has a grudge against this woman, because the woman is tied to the whole thing that ended up killing, their dad. and Angela's mom as well. So that whole thing that ended up causing those deaths is connected. This woman is connected to that.
Yes.
At E-Court. And so she's got this grudge on her, but she didn't intend to murder this woman.
No, it was an accidental death, but she's dead because of Darlene's actions.
Yes.
So basically what's happening is while Darlene is trying to get the safe deposit box, Elliot is still checked out, and Elliot is just casually like on his phone trying to look up information on Susan Jacobson because she's disappeared and she's like his key to getting into this bank now, pulling off this heist, so he needs to find her. And there's a point where Darlene's getting annoyed with Elliot for seemingly not caring, and she sees him on his phone, and she kind of like grabs the phone away from him, and she sees what's on it for a split second. Elliot manages to grab it back. Elliot's like kind of like, that's not your business, leave me alone. But and that's when they're like on the subway train waiting for the subway to go to the bank where their mom's safe deposit box is.
Mm-hmm. After they go to the bank and go to the safe deposit box, they find out that the bank has gotten rid of the box. They've destroyed the contents of the box because that's policy, that she hadn't paid in a certain amount of time, so they remove the box and destroy the contents.
Yeah, that pisses Darlene off.
Yeah, Darlene's like flipping out about this, and Elliot's like, what the fuck? Why do you even care?
Yeah.
And she ends up revealing that she doesn't care about her mom, it's Angela. She cares about Angela, and this is just how she's manifesting that.
Right.
Her concerns about that are manifesting because of that, because she's like, you're right, Angela's gone, like, and she's having trouble dealing with this. And then she reveals about knowing who the woman was that was on
Elliot's phone,
and reveals to Elliot that she's dead.
Yes.
Well, she says it like in a way like, do you really want me to say what happened? And Elliot's like, fuck!
Yeah, she says, do you really need me to say it? And Elliot's just like, kind of like, fuck. And then she's like, So
Elliot's just like, fuck, okay, I'm screwed there now. So he's kind of upset. And then she goes on about the whole thing with Angela, and he's trying to deal with that. And he gets to the point where says,
she mentions,
she's like, you don't care about this at all.
She mentions,
and he's all like, I
Vera.
do care.
Yeah. He's like, I do care. And then she mentions Vera coming up to Elliot's apartment.
Vera's the drug dealer from season 1.
Yes.
The one that Elliot ended up getting into prison and then getting out of prison.
She mentions this to Elliot, and then Elliot's like, kind of like, the fuck, why didn't you tell me, like, he showed up? And Elliot's like, why didn't you tell me he showed up? And then Darlene's just like, I did, and you said it wasn't a big deal, don't worry about it. And Elliot's like looking at Mr. Robot, because Elliot's like, I definitely didn't say that. So he's looking at Mr. Robot, and Mr. Robot's just like, no, I didn't say that. That wasn't me. And Elliot's like, kind of like, well, if I didn't say that, you're the only other person in my head. You had to have said it. And Mr. Robot's denying.
We'll get to more of that.
Yeah.
We'll get to more of that later, because it's like the last tag at the end of the episode. But before that,
we gotta
let's talk about Dom again.
Yeah, we gotta talk about Dom again, because this is where Dom goes back to work, and she has her interview about, and I forgot his name already. Santiago.
Santiago.
Yeah, Santiago.
Who's the previous agent that was affiliated with the Dark Army.
Basically, she has to feed the FBI the story that Dark Army gave her.
That he was a dirty agent that was on the take with this drug cartel.
Yeah, he was on tape with the drug cartel. So she tells the agent interviewing her this cover story, and then her contact with her handler with the Dark Army. I guess the taxidermist calls her and asks her how the interview went, and she says, oh yeah, they bought it, I'm sure. She's like, how sure?
How sure, yeah.
Yeah, how sure? She's like, I don't know, like 99.9% sure. And then she's like, okay. And they hang up the end of that conversation. And then shortly afterwards, like, I think that evening, Dom gets like a message like, oh, you should see this, like one of our agents is dead, and she looks and she sees the news story about the FBI agent jumping out of his apartment window and killing himself.
The one she'd reported to.
Yeah.
But before she even knows that's happened, she sees a text message. That says 99% like isn't good enough or something.
Yeah, it says 99% isn't good enough. Let's try for 100 next time.
Yeah.
It's like some creepy shit.
So she's like, oh shit, like this is like even worse than
this is even
I thought it
worse.
was.
Yeah, this is like, she's in deep shit with this.
Yeah. Now we can talk about Vera and the Third, as I have it listed.
Vera and the Third, interesting way to put it.
Which is the last tag of the episode when Mr. Elliot or Mr. Robot and Elliot, Mr. Elliot,
Elliot. It might be Mr.
talking,
Elliot.
when they're talking about like what the fuck if it wasn't you, if it wasn't me, like what's going on. We get the scene at the very end of the episode where there's a woman talking to a little boy, and the little boy's spinning around in an office chair at the top of a building, and the woman says,
well, it's Elliot's mom and young Elliot. Like you could tell because it's like the same actors from those scenes.
Yeah, so it's a little boy version of Elliot and stuff, and then when he was in the chair like spinning around, he's like, who's coming? Elliot? And she says no. And he said, Mr. Robot? No, the third one.
Third one. Yeah, the other one. Because it's that scene where Elliot's like, Elliot's like, I didn't say that about Vera. Did you to Mr. Robot? And Mr. Robot's like, no, I didn't say that. And then they start to come to this realization
that his third personality is Donald Trump.
Yes.
Every day Elliot puts on a wig and rubs Cheeto dust all over his face.
Cheeto dust all over his face.
Puts on a really long tie and goes golfing.
There's a third persona, and it brings it invites all kinds of questions. Like who's the third persona? And I've seen
is this somebody that we've already known, or is this somebody that we have yet to encounter?
I've seen theories that this third persona is actually Elliot, and that Elliot that we're following is the Elliot we've been following is another artificial persona like Mr. Robot.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of possibilities. Yeah. There's a lot of theories about what it could be, and like I was running through my head about people we know, and I'm like, well, it can't be this person because we've seen them together. But then again, like with Elliot being an unreliable narrator and everything kind of coming from his perspective, we don't know how much of that is real because they did that trick in season 3
where we thought he was with his
mom. And
we thought he
was in prison.
Yeah, we thought he was with his mom all the time, and he was in prison the whole time. And then it came out like where he says to his friend, he says to the viewer, oh yeah, I know I lied to you, but it's because I can't trust you.
So it makes you wonder, like it makes you look back and go like, okay, what scenes could have been in his head and not, like even if other people saw him, that it could somehow be explained. Like what other characters could that be that we already know?
Some people have speculated that it's Sam Sepiol, which is a code name and an alias Elliot has used several times throughout the series.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's one point of speculation.
It could be,
because,
do you think it's anybody that we've already seen, though?
Well, the reason is, because Sam Sepiol is a codename Elliot has used, and also, Sam was one of Elliot's childhood friends that he had.
Mm-hmm.
And so it could be that. That seems like one of the best theories so far. I don't think it's anybody necessarily that we've seen, just because a lot of things wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, I was immediately, the first person I'd think of, who could it be that they've kind of hinted at this before, I think. Just a little bit, not fully. But so much has happened since that point that it just wouldn't make sense. But Tyrell, for example.
Right.
Was always kind of a speculation, oh, maybe he's a personality of his or something. But so much has happened now with the manhunt for him and everything else that it just doesn't make sense.
Right. And also there's so many things Elliot and Mr. Robot were in completely different locations than Tyrell in a lot of situations. So, how would that even jive?
Yeah. So it's things like that. You look at that and that doesn't make sense. You can look at it even darker and say, what if Elliot himself is White Rose? Right. And they're the same person,
again,
but then a lot of that doesn't make sense.
Again, they're in completely different locations at different times, at the same time.
Yeah. Not just that, but White Rose is older and was involved in this thing from the very beginning, the Deus Project. Elliot would have been a child when that was happening.
Yeah, Elliot would, that just doesn't make sense. There's a thing, it's gotta make sense Mr.
But what if Elliot is Philip Price? secretly Angela's father this whole time. We thought they were just childhood
friends. The Mr. Robot reveal made sense because Mr. Robot was never seen separate from Elliot.
Yeah.
Before the big reveal came. Mr. Robot was always in the room with Elliot, talking to Elliot, or seemingly interacting with other people with Elliot present. It was never, here's a scene where Mr. Robot is in downtown Manhattan and Elliot is like at his apartment or something. And
another one that could work if they explain it in a little bit of a different way would be Vera.
Right.
But it would have to be complicated if they did that, because there would have to be a real Vera and then the Vera that Elliot interacted with.
Right.
Which would have been himself. So then the real Vera would be the one that like Darlene saw and had her encounter with. And then the Vera that, is the one that we've seen up until now could have been a manifestation of Elliot's personality.
Right.
So that could work. But it would have to be, both would have to exist,
Yeah.
So there's a few different things like that, or like the cleanest way to do it obviously would be to make it somebody that we haven't yet encountered.
Yes.
But we don't know. I mean, this is just a little interesting wrinkle they threw at us right at the end of the episode.
Right.
But that's pretty much it. That's it for the episode. One other thing, I guess there was one storyline we skipped over from the first episode. It's just, there's really very little worth mentioning. It was the most pointless part of the episode, at least so far. We don't have any context for if it might become important later. And that's Tyrell. He really just kind of is bored at work.
Oh yeah. Tyrell bored at work because he's a figurehead and he has nothing to do.
Yeah, they basically just cut to him and he was basically like the young Elliot spinning in his chair.
Yes.
Balancing a pen on his upper lip, he's bored and doesn't know what to do now. He's overcome the situation, and basically the scene with him is only exists there to say that he's still on the board. And otherwise it was kind of pointless, but then again, it could be the most important scene in the season so far. We just don't know. Yeah, so that's it for Mr. Robot. We're going to continue to talk about it week to week until the season is through. But we're moving on now to The Good Place. And we're going to be talking about Season 4, Episode 4, Tinker Tailor Demon Spy, in which we finally see who the arrival of that mystery figure from the last episode is.
Yes.
And in typical Good Place fashion, they lead it up to make it like this big haunting thing. Like, oh god, what's coming? And then it turns out to be, right from the very beginning, anticlimactic before turning into something interesting.
Right, yes.
So they pull like a double swerve on you. Like, you're like, okay, who is this mysterious figure? Oh, it's Glenn.
Yeah, it's Glenn from The Bad Place.
He's just, he's just a nobody from The Bad Place. And it's like, but then he brings up an interesting proposition or an idea, basically. And that's that the Michael that everybody knows this season isn't actually Michael.
Right.
And they swapped him out.
We had seen at the end of the last season that they had put Vicky in a Michael suit.
Mm-hmm.
And told her to really take Michael's place and the good place.
Yeah. I mean, it was a reason for Michael's freak out.
Yes.
So now we see Glenn coming to report that and say that they've already swapped Michael. And so you need to watch out for that. And so now they're like starting to second guess Michael. They don't know if they can trust him or not. At first they're like, oh yeah, we trust you. We just don't believe him. We're going to play along.
Right.
And then there's that certain point where he's like pretending to be like, oh no, I guess I'm in a bad spot. Wink, wink. And Eleanor's like, no, like seriously.
Seriously, you're in a bad spot. Like, yeah, because, well, Eleanor doesn't know who to believe, because obviously, some random demon coming from a bad place to say, oh, that's not Michael, isn't, really super trustworthy either. And it's funny, too, with Jason, because he's like, Michael is Vicky in a Michael suit. And then Jason is like, or that's what you want us to believe. And then he's just like, yeah, that's what I want you to believe.
Yeah, Jason keeps doing that. Or that's what you want us to see here.
Yeah.
What I thought was funny was that when Glenn showed up, the first thing he said is, if it's not too much trouble, can I get a hot glass of pig urine?
Yes.
I'm not picky. Whatever urine you have is fine.
Yeah. So it's great. So it goes into this whole thing where Eleanor has both Glenn and Michael locked away in different rooms, and they're kind of trying to grill them both, She's trying to grill them. She tells Michael to take off his demon suit, and Michael's like, you don't want me to do that. And Eleanor's like, now's not the time to be bashful. And he's like, no, if he says, like, I am like a 6,000 foot tall fire squid.
Fire squid, yeah.
Yeah.
There's teeth everywhere and there's a smell.
Yeah, there's teeth everywhere. There's like a really bad smell. It's just gonna be like fire and tentacles. And
he's all, there's no way I can reveal my true self without the whole town seeing it.
Without the whole town seeing it and freaking out. And Jason just keeps going, that sounds awesome. I want to see it. He's like, no, you don't want to see it. Jason's like, I want to see it.
Yeah, it keeps coming back. He'll have a somber moment where he's like, but most of all, you guys won't look at me the same as you did before. Would you really want to be my friend? And Jason's like, yes, that's what I've been saying.
Yes, that's what I've been saying. It's great. And then Janet in this episode is just like, so Janet comes up with like a lie detector that she says is going to be able to tell them, if Michael is lying about who he is. And then they decide to test on Glenn, and then Glenn blows up.
Yeah.
Into blue goo. It's blue goo. And then they're like, oh, we killed Glenn. And then Janet's like, no, demons can't actually die. So Glenn will just, over the course of several months, reform himself back together. And
here's the quote. It's all, reforming Glenn will go through it. It's
yes.
First a larva, then a slug monster, spooky girl, teenage boy, giant ball of tongues, social media CEO, and then finally demon.
I like how social media CEO is like the last stage before demon. That's great.
So he's blowing up now, and so they're like, okay, so now we can't figure this out.
So basically they figured out, like, so they try to reason it out, like, when the switch happened, they figure, well, and they're like, yeah, but we, like, Eleanor's trying to, like, tell Glenn, we're smart, we figured out when you got the punchy demon into our group. And they're like, no, you were supposed to figure that out, Yeah. Yeah, it's like, that we weren't.
So that's when they did the swap, yeah.
That's when they did the swap, yeah, when they were taking that demon back to the bad place.
So finally, after much debate, Michael says that he's going to blow himself up.
Oh, there's also a fun thing because the room they put Michael in has like all these sex toys that like Janet's like now ex-boyfriend, I guess, that she made.
Oh, it's because they're in what's her name's house, the middle place.
Oh, that's right.
Because this good place is in the backyard of the middle place.
That's right. I forgot about that. You're right.
So it's all that woman's sex toys. She's that creepy woman that like was spying on Chidi and Eleanor, like having sex and stuff.
Yeah, she's the woman who's like obsessed with cocaine and sex.
Yeah, and she has all these sex toys, including a sex diaper.
Yeah, including a sex diaper. Which Michael's like, ew, I touched the sex diaper. Derek, Jan's creation, he keeps popping in and taking stuff and being like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna need this. It's hilarious.
But Michael agrees to blow himself up, or like suggests that he does. And he says like, I'll do it. It's the only way you're going to know, because if he's all, what if we lock you away? He's all, then you're just going to think that I might be able to escape. It's all, this is the only way. So he's getting ready to do it.
He says it's the only way without having to completely reset the experiment.
And then Jason has a thought, and it's because he hugged Janet and he had called her girl, and she always responds to him, not a girl. And she didn't. And so he points that out, that something's wrong. And they end up like throwing the magnetic handcuffs or whatever on.
He throws the magnetic handcuffs on Janet, and she changes. It's revealed she's actually one of the bad Janets.
Yes. So she's one of the evil Janets, and she'd been kind of setting everything up. It was so funny where she was all, and I was just about to finish a plan that was gonna have Tahani get an asymmetric haircut.
Yes.
I was like, you monster.
So we find out that the Vicky Michael switch didn't happen. What happened was instead on the train they swapped out Janet with a bad Janet, and bad Janet's been sabotaging the experiment this whole time. That's why everything's been going wrong. That's why, like at the beginning of the episode when they were doing Magic Pictionary, that's why it went wrong. The experiment with Chidi, everything that's gone wrong is because of. And if you could actually watch those episodes too, and you could, in retrospect, you could look at it and say, "Oh yeah, Janet is like really making some bad suggestions here."
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's sabotaging everything they're doing.
And it's nice because, and this is the twist I like, because you can go back and you can actually watch the previous episodes and see it. And also, like, even in this episode, like, the conversation with Jason and Janet, where she doesn't reply back with "not a girl," happens in front of you before the reveal even happens. But it's
like it doesn't happen right before the reveal. It happened like a bit before.
Yeah, it happens a bit before, and I'm sure
and it took Jason a while to kind of put the pieces together.
I'm sure if you're paying attention, you could figure. But even I didn't pick up on that until the reveal, which is weird. But then, it's been pointed out, like, the show is so good at distracting you with other things that it can pull off something like that.
So it ends up, they end up getting the bad Janet. They have her captured now. The good Janet's been marbleized and taken back to the bad place. And now Michael and Jason now in a dapper suit, are heading to the bad place to pick up Janet.
Yes.
Good Janet again, to get his girl back. Or is it like, Michael says, let's get our girl back. And Jason says, not a girl.
Yes.
So they're going to pick up good Janet. That's the end of the episode. They're on the same little train car thing that Glenn came in on. So that's the episode. I also wanted to mention, because there's a hilarious part at the very beginning of the episode where they're playing like Pictionary.
Yes, that was Magic Pictionary and Chidi's horse.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, even before that, it was like, Tahani like drew like a butterfly and the gossip columnist was able to guess it was Mariah Carey's butterfly tattoo.
Back tattoo or something.
Yeah, and he said he did his thesis on it.
Yeah, I did my college thesis on that tattoo.
And because he guessed it right, the butterfly came to life. And then Chidi, of course, was really nervous about drawing something, but he ended up drawing and Simone ended up guessing, oh, that was my horse or something, but it was this really bad drawing of a horse. And the second she guessed it, he was like, oh no, and like turn, and you see it coming to life. And it's just a monstrosity. It's like he can't support its own head. It's like falling on the ground. It's all lopsided. And there's a great part before we knew that Janet was swapped with bad Janet, where she's like, oh, I had to track down Chidi's horse and put it out of its misery. I won't give you any details, but I had to cut off its head. Twist off its head. I'll stop there. There was lots of gushing.
There's a lot of gushing. Okay, I'll stop there. Yeah, that was great.
And poor Chidi, like, before that, was, like, having, like, a breakdown about, bringing a monstrosity into the world that was just suffering.
It was just bad Janet all along.
Yeah, but more of bad Janet's influence. But it was funny that, then, Chidi and Eleanor were like, Eleanor was trying to kind of make him understand that everything was okay, and she was eating nachos with him. Mm-hmm. And then she ended up, like, she's, like, started, like, to go back to talk with Michael and everybody else, like, when all the main plot stuff in this episode happened. And she, like, kind of stops for a second. He's like, you want the nachos, right? And she's like, yeah. And you see her grab this huge plate. And then the next shot you see is her, like, walking into the house, and it's just completely empty, the plate. So she's devoured through this huge plate of nachos. It was pretty funny. But yeah, that's the episode. Pig urine, monstrosity horses drawn by Chidi.
Yes.
Demons turn to goo. And bad Janet all along.
All the good things.
Yeah. So that's it for the episode. Like Mr. Robot, we're going to be talking about the series week to week as the episodes come out until this season is complete. And this is its final season, so until the series is complete.
Yes.
that brings us to an end to this podcast. But we still have to talk about what's coming up in the week ahead. So we're recording this on Saturday, October 18th, but on Friday, or October 19th, I should say, on Friday, October 18th, The House of Flowers came to Netflix. Baby came to Netflix. Living with Yourself came to Netflix. So are you aware of that show? That's with
the Paul Rudds.
Yeah.
Yes.
Paul Rudd he plays a clone of himself, and the clone has he goes into a program that's supposed to better himself, and instead they just kind of cloned a better version of him and then just dumped him.
Yeah, they dumped him. Yeah, so it doesn't actually make him better.
He wakes up and is like, what the hell? And he returns home and sees this other him. He claws himself
out of his makeshift grave.
Yeah. So, yeah, that series looks pretty good. That just came out on Netflix. Also, Looking for Alaska, the miniseries, came to Hulu, and Modern Love came to Amazon Prime. This Sunday, October 20th, this is a big one, Watchmen comes to HBO. This is Damon Lindelof's, it's like a pseudo-sequel to the graphic novel. Not to the movie, but to the graphic novel. He's called it a remix. Says it takes elements from it. He said Damon Lindelof has said it's a one and done. They might do more seasons, but the one season has a self-contained story.
Right. He said in an interview he envisioned and wrote this as a single self-contained season. There's not any seeds or there's nothing planned for additional seasons, on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Besides whatever mysteries he would have just left hanging.
Which it doesn't sound like he's gonna do that, but.
Well, no, but I mean, everybody always, when you end a show, you don't answer everything. You leave certain things hanging.
Did you see what J.J. Abrams said about Star Wars today?
What did J.J. Abrams say about Star Wars?
J.J. Abrams said about the new Star Wars movie, he said that he wants the new Star Wars movie to be a definitive ending to the previous 9 films, and he wants to wrap everything up and leave nothing hanging.
Well, I mean, the next movies that have all gotten signed up are not continuations of these characters.
Right, exactly.
It's not the Skywalker saga anymore. It's these different ones.
Right.
Taking place in different areas of the universe and stuff. So that makes sense. But back on track, Monday, October 21st, Catherine the Great miniseries comes to HBO. Tuesday, October 22nd, The Misery Index comes to TBS. Wednesday, October 23rd, Castle Rock returns for its second season on Hulu. This one's going to focus heavily on misery.
Mm-hmm.
And The Cry miniseries comes to Sundance on that day as well. On Thursday, October 24th, Daybreak comes to Netflix. On Friday, October 25th, The Kaminsky Method comes to Netflix. On Sunday, October 27th, Miss Fletcher, the miniseries, comes to HBO. And Silicon Valley returns to HBO for its final season. On Wednesday, October 30th, Baroness von Sketchow returns to IFC. And finally, on Friday, November 1st, American Son on Netflix, Dickinson on Apple TV, For All Mankind on Apple TV, The Morning Show on Apple TV, C on Apple TV, and Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan on Amazon Prime. So, obviously, Apple TV is launching on November 1st. So yeah, that's it. Next week, we're going to continue talking about The Good Place and Mr. Robot. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at Foxel Hero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can subscribe to the podcast through any major podcast line, like iTunes or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Good night.
Good night.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very best